Hello and welcome to the Rabid Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regard to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel in a more tangible way, hit that join button. Your options for citizenship in the Rabyd Nation will be presented to you. Today I want to do a response video. I haven't done one of these in a while, but I feel that Mondays are going to have a lot of response videos or reaction videos, whatever you want to call them, as I react to other people's videos and things. These take a little bit longer, but I've recent changes in schedule allow me to do a reaction. And so today I'm going to be reacting to a video by Trinity Radio called 10 Questions for Atheists in 2021. I remember this guy from earlier when he did a similar video, but this is, I guess, a more updated version of his video with a few different questions. And he seems sincere enough. So, let's go. Without any further ado, let's get into it.
Last year, I made a video, 10 Questions for Atheists. That's in a playlist that has 12 episodes, as I listened to what atheists said and then interacted with that. There were a lot of responses, and I still get responses to this day from that video. Now, admittedly, there were some things in that video that might have been tongue-in-cheek, but I genuinely wanted to hear the answers to those questions. Quite a few atheists seemed to appreciate that I was trying to understand their positions in a greater way, but many still didn't think my questions were genuine. A lot of people also thought that I was too wordy for the question to come out in a precise way. So here I'm asking these questions as simply and concisely as I possibly can and without any snark whatsoever. I genuinely want to know the answers to these questions. Question 1. If you have a deconversion story from any world religion, would you mind sharing that story? If you grew up in a non-religious household, what was it like to experience being around other people who were raised religious?
I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I've been a Christian most of my life. From about the age of 8, I gave my heart to Jesus, was filled with the Spirit at 13 in the Pentecostal church. I grew up in the Pentecostal church, got called into the ministry, spent 10 years in the Assemblies of God, spent 10 years as a congregational pastor. That's a pretty good Reader's Digest version of my history with Christianity. I was a pastor for 20-some years, so I know the Bible, have degrees in Bible and theological studies, one from Trinity Bible College and the other from Asbury Theological Seminary. My deconversion story is basically, as I went farther and farther into Christianity, I had more questions about the truth and whether or not the truth of the Gospels could be verified, life of Christ, things like that. And the more I studied, the more doubts I had, the less questions I found good answers for. I slowly but surely began to find all the arguments for the existence of God unconvincing, the Bible unconvincing, the message of salvation unequally so. And eventually in 2016, I completely deconverted from Christianity, or even a little bit of deism, and became an atheist while I was still in the pulpit. Since leaving the pulpit in 2018, I have become an atheist advocate. I've done some time teaching and some other things. But mostly my deconversion story is one of I left the church because I no longer felt anything was convincing and the evidence for God unconvincing. So I am currently an agnostic atheist.
Question number 2. Is there anything that Christian apologists or philosophers bring that you actually do consider to be good evidence for God? And if not, how do you define evidence?
As far as Christian apologists goes, and philosophers, no, I don't really, in fact, I'm going to be blunt. I think the state of Christian apologetics is pathetic. I spent a lot of time looking at apologists trying to find convincing evidence and never could. Most of the stuff I could debunk myself as a theist. And so I don't find any of it really all that convincing. I would define evidence in a lot of different ways. There's, of course, scientific evidence where you have data, research, repeatable test results. things like that. But there's also historical veracity. That is, like, can we have alternative people contemporary to the historical events that can also verify those events? There's a lot of things that go into that, but there's a lot of evidence there history-wise. There's also what would hold up in a court of law. The reason I'm giving all these other examples, it's not my question of whether I consider something good evidence. I think there are good evidential standards out there that we all accept. And so once we've accepted those and apply them to faith and the Bible and religion and whatever, you quickly find out that the evidence is not all that great.
Straightforwardly, I'm a dog person. Here's my dog, Indiana. Dogs, cats, both, or neither?
I'm a dog person. I love beagles in particular, hound dogs of all types, really. I enjoy anything like that. I tolerate cats as long as they're good mousers and they stay outdoors, but my dogs sleep with me. Actually, I don't have any dogs right now, but that's what usually happens. They end up on the foot of my bed sleeping.
Did Jesus exist as a single historical individual? And if so, how reasonable do you think it is for people to hold the position that Jesus did not exist?
I think it is quite possible that Jesus existed as a person, as an individual. I think there's some good mentions of him in Josephus, or at least of his followers. However, the evidence is pretty scanty, and just because somebody exists doesn't mean all the other claims about them are true. In fact, proving somebody's existence historically is actually quite mundane. I think people that claim that Jesus is a myth, they have a valid case because the evidence for Jesus' existence is also scanty, mostly because we don't really have anybody contemporary to Jesus to verify his existence or anything that he did. So we kind of are left without any reasonable good evidence. So I think both sides have good cases. Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter to me whether he existed or not. It's the claims of Christianity that are in question, ultimately, and the claims of the Gospels.
Of your Christian friends and family members, which one would stand the best chance of convincing you or persuading you than the others? Even if you think none of them stand a chance, some stand more of a chance than others, right? Who would that be and why?
Okay. I don't understand the validity of this question. It doesn't really matter whether or not one of my family members or friends would be able to convince me of Christianity's veracity or verifiability. It's not a question. This question seems to, and I'm going to be real blunt here, you're trying to find an emotional connection to somebody in order to bring people back into the faith on an emotional level, and that's never been the issue for me. The issue is whether or not the arguments for God, Christianity are convincing. So it doesn't really matter whether or not there's somebody out there that stood a chance of bringing me back into the faith or had more of a chance than others. I don't really have somebody, and the reason why is because that's not the issue for me. I don't understand why that would make any difference. The question for apologetics is offering evidence, offering reasonable proof, and so far I haven't seen that. So I don't know if the question's all that valid as far as apologetics or my faith for that matter. I didn't come to my decision to become an atheist on an emotional level. I came to it intellectually. And so any intellectual evidence provided with the standards of evidence previously listed, I would work, but it doesn't necessarily work for me right now.
What's your favorite film or television series?
I have lots of favorite movies, I guess. The Star Wars saga, of course, a lot of the original Star Trek fandoms. Let's see, favorite TV series, probably Babylon 5, the whole series. Of course, very partial to The Godfather, very old war movies and westerns, things like that. I'm pretty eclectic when it comes to my favorite films and TV series. This is the second kind of not atheist-related question, and I can only assume that you're looking for filler.
Contingency arguments for God's existence can be framed in a number of ways, obviously, but pick one, and what's your favorite response to this sort of contingency argument? Or if you're really ambitious, what's your favorite response to contingency arguments in general?
Contingency arguments, I am assuming we're talking about all the arguments for the existence of God, whether they're teleological or whatever. I don't find any of them convincing. I don't have a favorite because I think they're all crap. I studied them for a lot of years as a theist and found them wanting. And so they kind of failed me to keep my faith. So none of them I find very good. My basic general response to all of them is this, that most of them are logically fallacious. They use logical fallacies. They are good examples of logical fallacies. The truth values of all their proposed premises can't be verified, and so therefore they're pretty doggone near useless. So I don't really have any use for them. My favorite response is basically they're all garbage. They can't be verified. The truth value is not there, and so I just don't accept any of them. You really need a new one.
On your understanding of Christianity, what does it take for a person to become a Christian and experience everlasting life?
I was a preacher of the gospel for 20 years, so I would say if a man confess with his mouth and believe in his heart that Jesus Christ has raised from the dead, he shall be saved. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I have very well acquainted with Christianity's message of salvation, and I preached it. There is no evidence, however, for an everlasting eternal life, so I would take that off. But that was the promise, if you believed in your heart and that God had raised him from the dead and you confessed him with your mouth, you would be saved. I think that's Romans 10, 9 and 10, as I recall.
Whether you think anything in the Bible is true or not, do you think that the Bible or any passage in the Bible seems to teach eternal conscious suffering in hell? Maybe you think it teaches universal ultimate salvation or annihilation, the idea that people will no longer be conscious but will be annihilated and no longer have a conscious experience of anything. And I should say, I'm partly asking that question because a friend of mine, Chris Date at Rethinking Hell, would be happy to have a discussion or a debate on the subject of whether any Bible passage teaches eternal conscious torment.
Oh, yes, the doctrine of hell. My own theological conclusion about the doctrine of hell or annihilation became a temporal punishment place and then a final annihilation after justice was served. But even that had its problems. Basically, I felt that hell was a place where justice would be served, or we were all waiting for the final judgment. You could include Abraham's bosom in there if we include the teachings of Jesus, but I kind of got rid of all of it because I don't really believe in it anymore. It became one of the more problematic things. I think eternal torment is probably one of the biggest things that shows the injustice of God, and even annihilation kind of seems unjust too, given the incompletion of the evidence. It seems like you need to have better evidence for these things than, to convince people. I think convincing people is somewhat lacking on God's part if he exists, which I don't think he does. I don't believe he does. And so there's just not a God of good things there. I think people, the idea of your consciousness being annihilated at death is a far more nice alternative. Your friend can basically say that I believed in like a temporary torment place until judgment, and then finally after judgment, hell and death, and anybody who failed that judgment would be thrown into a lake of fire, and that lake of fire would annihilate them. That was my last position on the hell and lake of fire theology at the time, so that's where I stand.
What do you think is the most dangerous or problematic issue that theologically conservative Christians hold to? And I'm talking about an issue or a position, not a person, a movement, or a party.
Okay, the most dangerous position that conservative Christians hold. That's a hard one. I'll tell you what, I'll give you three of them. The first one is this notion of submission to authority in such an abject way that a person must become a slave to God. Paul clearly says that he is a bondservant of Jesus Christ and encourages everybody else to be so. The idea of submission to complete and utter submission to the authority of God, the authorities of the priesthood, and the authority of the Bible and or the authority of the Bible if you're a Protestant, is complete and utter. And quite frankly, it teaches a very dangerous thing, that we should just submit to whatever authorities there are, no matter how evil. And I think it's a very dangerous thing, because it causes a lot of people to go forward and deal with things. Another doctrine I would say is all the apocalyptic garbage, nonsense, that is ultimately very harmful to the future of our world, because we actually can see this in the Middle East all the time, where we have two groups of people going at it, and conservative Christians in the United States are all for cheering on somebody hoping to bring about the end of the world. Quite frankly, this apocalyptic view of the future just leads to a lot of political recklessness in the name of God. And quite frankly, we'd be better off politically if religion didn't exist for that reason in general. Finally, there is the constant, continual doctrine of you're a sinner and you're no good. The countless damage this has done to the psychology of people, where it is basically, I still wrestle with it as a deconverted person, that I can actually take credit for something I did, that I'm not a sinner in the hands of an angry God. The whole fear, guilt complex that the message of salvation brings is gone, and it takes a while to get over it. But so many people submit to this notion that they end up, basically having large struggles as they get on further in life. It's the reason why I created my channel.
Well, that's the list for 2021. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, and I sure hope you will respond in the comments, or make your own video in response. I'd love to hear what you have to say, because I genuinely want the answers to these questions. Thanks for showing up, and I'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.
Yeah, I wish you nothing but the best, I suppose, in your life, but I hope your endeavors as an apologist fail. Quite frankly, as an anti-theist, I think channels like yours, I hope, will die a slow and natural death, because quite frankly, the message of Christianity and the message of apologists is so poor and leads people to not really dealing with reality. Some of your questions were on a more personal note. I get that, because you're trying to build rapport with me. But the real issue, once again, is evidence. Okay, so these questions, I get what you're saying. I get why you keep asking them, but I don't think I'm going to give you the answers that you want to hear, because quite frankly, I stand as an agnostic atheist, and I'm such an agnostic atheist that I would say I don't ever believe that there will be any evidence presented to me in the context of actual evidence that will convince me that there's a deity. And so that's kind of where I stand. But thanks. To everybody else, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, subscribe, do the things that you do. And hopefully I'll see you again sometime. As always, make sure you're living your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So before that happens, don't waste your time, money, or treasure on the trappings of faith and religion, because that's a dead end. Instead, give yourself to your family, your friends, yourself, and the world around you. Make it a better place. Make somebody's burden a little bit lighter. And as always, I thank you for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.